Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of the Jumps Racing Podcast here in association with horseracing.net. It's almost time for the Cheltenham Festival, but not quite. We'll be talking a little bit about Cheltenham later on in the podcast. Don't forget that you can listen to us on Spotify. You can also on Apple Music too, and not forgetting at SoundCloud as well. And you can even watch us on YouTube. You just need to subscribe. As always, hosted by myself, Bobby Beevers, alongside Nick Sedder. Nick, good to see you. Another podcast, another location for yourself.
Yeah, good evening, Bobby. Last week, I think it was, where were we last? Oh, Nicky Henderson's. We were in Swindon last week in a travel lodge on £3 Wi-Fi. Tonight, we're in Ditch Heat. Might be a clue where we're going tomorrow. And we're in a lovely little country pub in a wonderful little village. So very quaint. Wi-Fi is a bit dodgy, but the Guinness is fine, so I'm quite happy.
I feel like I should go on location myself here because every single week I sit in the same spots in my living room to do the podcast. You are literally going all over. So I think on one of the podcasts I need to either go down to the local or find somewhere a little bit different. Even if it's just another part of the house, I think I need to look at it. Definitely moving somewhere because I'm feeling ever so slightly left out in terms of you being on location and me being left behind. What we're going to do, just let people know, we're going to look back at what we saw on Saturday and Sunday with the racing action at Kempton, also Fontwell on Sunday too. We're going to look back at my Cheltenham preview night, which I hosted and organised on Monday night. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. We're going to hear from Jim McGrath and Jonjo O'Neill. They're going to be on the podcast, and then we'll look ahead to the Supreme. I think the first race on the card of the Cheltenham Festival. Right then, Nick, let's start looking back then at what we saw, and we'll start first with Who Dares Wins, who won that Grade 2 Novices Chase over the extended 2.5 miles. Now, Who Dares Wins I was there when he won the Summit Juvenile Hurdle a fair few years ago at Doncaster. He went on to run in the Triumph that year. Last year, he won the Northumberland Plate, and now he's winning a Grade 2 Novice Chase. It's just fantastic with him, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's a combination that doesn't happen very often. You think of the likes of Overturn, they don't come along very often. Horses that are very good on the flat, have the speed to be competitive over 2 miles, and then to translate that to be able to jump as well and travel over slightly further in national hunt racing. And he had a terrific summer last year, and he's having a terrific winter as well. He showed plenty of promise in his first 2 starts over fences, and then he got off the mark in Grade 2 fashion really, really well. There was so much to like about the performance. It looked for a long way in the closing stages coming down the straight that Southfield Stone had his measure, but he deserves so much credit for the attitude he showed. Every time Tom Cannon asked him a question, he responded, and he deserved the win in the end. The form was solid coming into it. He was narrowly beaten by Master Tommy Tucker, who's a smart novice himself, and this form looks solid as well. I was at Cheltenham today for a media event. Alan King was there. He suggested that he'll step up to 3 miles next at the Cheltenham Festival, but he doesn't know yet whether that will be in the Ultimate Chase or in the RSA. Personally, thinking about everything, I think he would have plenty to find as a novice chaser in the RSA in a Grade 1, bona fide Grade 1 contest. Yeah, the handicap weights came out today. He's rated 147 in the Ultimate. I think there's plenty to be had with that sort of mark. Personally, I think that's where I'd send him, bearing in mind that racing off level weights against the likes of Champ would be a really tough ask.
We talked there about Who Dares Wins running in the Triumph Hurdle a fair few years ago. Talking of the Triumph Hurdle, we need to talk about Solo, who was the 6-4 favourite in British debut for the Paul Nicholls Yard. Very impressive on Saturday. And a result of what we saw on Saturday, he's gone from 25-1 to 3-1 favourite for the Triumph Hurdle.
He has, yeah. He came over from France with a bit of a reputation. It was his first start in Britain since joining Paul Nicholls, and he was named well because he was in a different galaxy, wasn't he, on Saturday? Oh, that was my worst one, yeah. But yeah, it was some statement on British debut. You know, lots to like about him. He put the race to bed really fast when it mattered, and you know, he's been shortening the market for the Triumph as a consequence, and he'll head there with a very good chance. Personally, having taken a look in reflection at the performance again, looked at the market, I'm inclined to say it's perhaps a little bit of an overreaction. 25s into threes, bearing in mind that, you know, this year's Triumph looks a good renewal. You know, we've got Goshen in there, who has been visually very, very impressive. All Mankind and A Wave of the Sea, both of whom have won Grade 1 races. Aspire Towers won a decent Grade 2 over in Ireland. Sosaico showing good form. This is a really good renewal of the Triumph Hurdle. And as impressive as Solo was at Kempton on Saturday, I don't think I'll be taking 3-1 at the moment, bearing in mind that the last horse to win the Adonis, I'll throw this at you, Bobby, completely off the cuff. Do you know that at all? 2011. Last horse to win the Adonis and follow up in the Triumph. 2011.
2011.
Same stable as Solo.
So obviously Paul Nicholls.
Paul Nicholls, an old favourite.
An old favourite?
Yeah, he was around for an awful long time.
Go on, you'll have to tell me.
Zarkanda. Yeah. He was the last horse to follow up in the Triumph after winning the Adonis Hurdle. So 9 years, 10 years ago now, 9 years ago, I think there's reasons to take on Solo at the prices at the time of recording.
And I think as well, and I said this at my preview night, Goshen is my nap of the festival. So I think he'll beat Solo and All Mankind for that matter as well. The Kingwell Hurdle, the Grade 2 over 2 miles, Song for Someone. Wasn't it fantastic for Tom Simmons with this horse, Song for Someone, to go and get the job done?
Yeah, definitely. It was nice to see this race run because, you know, it was cancelled at Wincanton the week before. It was a shame that a couple didn't turn up, you know, because the going still proved to be pretty testing, but the winner did it well. The Kingwell is treated as like a potential trial for the Champion Hurdle. I don't think we've seen a Champion Hurdle contender, but Song for Someone was well backed, and yeah, very much got the job done against Diego de Charmel, and who was switched back from fences, and Chibello. A game performance.
The Dove Crit as well was also run on Saturday afternoon. Highway 102 for the Chris Gordon yard. Tom Cannon in the saddle. Not a great performance, but did get the job done.
Yeah, bearing in everything in mind, I think there was a lot to like about this because he probably came into this. There was a few nice looking types in here, none more so probably than, you know, the likes of Buzz, who was well backed from the Nicky Henderson yard, came with a buzz about him, and Highway 102 had just won 2 low-key races at Plumpton. Admittedly, he'd done them really, really well. He'd won them very, very emphatically. But the questions were obvious about him is that he was chucked straight into Grade 2 level, whether he would be able to, whether there was any substance really behind those clear-cut wins at Plumpton. It turns out there was, because he just kept on rolling from the front. You know, he was given a positive ride by Tom Cannon, and, you know, who had a very good day on Saturday and kept on rolling. What's interesting about him is that his connections have come out and said that he'll go to the Imperial Cup next, potentially then go on to Aintree. It's interesting that he misses Cheltenham, and I will just look up his mark, which we'll come back to in a moment. It'd be interesting to see what the handicapper's made of that. Wonder what mark he'll go into the Imperial Cup with. So while we're talking about Mr. Malarkey, I will Google that.
Yeah, Mr. Malarkey's brought it on very, very nicely indeed. The Betway Handicap Chase, the Grade 3 on the card on Kempton on Saturday afternoon. Mr. Malarkey, the winner, returned at 9-1 for Colin Tizard. Jonjo O'Neill Jr was the man in the saddle. Black Corton was back in second, the 5-1 favourite for Paul Nicholls. And Bryony Frost, a cracking bit of steering, you'd have to say, from Jonjo O'Neill, and a very good performance from Mr. Malarkey.
Yeah, very quickly, as we'll hear in a little while from his father, that he's having a really good season, Jonjo Jr. That's 3 notable wins in February for him now, Mr. Malarkey being the third. And yeah, this horse has long been thought of as a real staying chaser to follow. He had that excellent novice campaign. He was well backed. I think it was for the National Hunt Chase last season. And then he came back this term with a bit of a reputation and sort of struggled to get going, but he's very much back in the groove now. The one thing I'd say about him is that this win came off 147. He has the Ultima next. He'll go up in the weights for this. Again, I haven't seen his mark today. There was so much going on. Have you ever been to the weights announcement at Cheltenham, Bobby? For the
for Cheltenham, I haven't. No.
Oh, hectic! There's so much going on. There's so much food as well to get stuck into as well. It's so I haven't yet seen his mark for the Ultima. Imagine he'll be punished at least a couple of pounds. So it will be a big ask for him to follow up, but deserves plenty of credit for seeing off a smart field. There was some decent types in behind him, and very likeable. And there'll be plenty more days with him, you'd imagine, for just an 8-year-old, is it? A 7-year-old. So yeah, it strikes me as a type that will stick around in the staying sphere for a long time to come.
If we fast forward almost 24 hours after we had the National Spirit Hurdle, the Grade 2 at Fontwell on Sunday afternoon, you watch the race. At one point, you're thinking, is it going to be Kelder Stan's race, Thomas Darby? It actually went in the way of William Henry, who was closing on the front two. He ran on well and then got the job done.
Yeah, I suppose in running, you'd be entitled to think, it could be Kelder Stan's race, and it could be Thomas Darby's race. You'd never think it'd be William Henry's. He was miles off the pace. He looked a difficult ride, and then things made the front two clearly tired, and he really got going and absolutely flew home. And all three ended up finishing quite a bunch. They'll all go to Cheltenham, and it's interesting to see what will happen with all three, really, because in Kelder Stan, he's probably not quite good enough for a proper graded race at Cheltenham. He goes to the county. Thomas Darby has entered in the Champion Hurdle, and I know there is a temptation to send him there, but the vibes are from his trainer that he'll go straight to Aintree. William Henry, if I remember correctly, at Nicky Henderson's last week, he's entered in the stayers, but they don't think stamina will suit him in that race. He's likely to go for the Coral Cup, a race he won last year. And while I'm in a roll, I've got Highway 102's mark in front of me now. Well, he's gone up £11.
Oh, nice one.
So it'd be, I assume he'd be in the Imperial Cup off 146, which is probably still a little bit of room for manoeuvre there. It'd be interesting to see how he gets on, bearing in mind, that there's plenty of prize money on offer at Cheltenham. Could prove to be a bit of a shrewd move to go for the Imperial Cup instead.
Yeah, we just see where they go with him. Now, as we said at the beginning of the podcast, it was my Cheltenham preview night on Monday night, what I organised, should I say, and hosted myself. And during the evening, Nick caught up with Jim McGrath.
Now, I've managed to prize Jim away from the pies and peas on offer at the Cheltenham preview night here in Sheffield for a quick chat about the Cheltenham Gold Cup, Jim, and just your general memories of the race over your career, really.
Well, as a kid, I was son of a guy who was in the RAF, and in the 60s, or early 60s, we were stationed at Gloucester, not far from Cheltenham, and I fell in love with racing in 1963 when I saw the Grand National, and so started to follow it closely. So obviously the first big horse that I remember was Arkle, who seemed to be everyone's hero. It wasn't until I went to Timeform in 74 that I was a fan rather than someone that knew a lot about it. You think you know a lot about it, then you join a place like Timeform and you realise you know very little of worth about it, and then you're able to put his achievements into perspective. It's funny we're talking about the Gold Cup, but other than when he really slaughtered Millhouse, who was a fine horse himself, basically Arkle's reputation was made around his handicap performances. I mean, obviously, someone that was so dominant and so brilliant in handicaps, it's no surprise he won 3 Gold Cups. They were, I won't say easy meat, it wasn't easy beating Millhouse, but the last one he won, I mean, I think he could have won the race with a leg tied up. But to win Hennessy's and Whitbreads, an Irish Grand National and races like that in the manner that he did, only a great horse could do it. And if you believe in a handicapping system, remember the Timeform system, even though it's slightly outdated today in the weights that are carried, don't really reflect it in the way Timeform was set it up. So 175 equals 12 stone 7 in a steeplechase. and 140 equals 10 stone in a flat race. And basically, Arkle blew the scale, because at 212 he was obviously rated £37 better than an average Gold Cup winner, which seems unbelievable. And, you know, people have criticised Timeform for it and said it can't possibly be right. But if you believe in a handicapping system and, you know, a weight for distance beaten, he had so many examples that those were the sort of performances he was put up. And as you probably know yourself, that the official handicap system was changed to accommodate him. Here's a handicap if Arkle runs, here's one without it.
A quick one on Arkle. Do you think in this day and age, because they always say, you know, sport changes, times change, and you put him in a handicap or a Grade 1 race, would he still be as good in this day and age as he was back then, bearing everything in mind?
They're very interesting points. I always think in sport, rightly or wrongly, this is just my opinion, I haven't got anything to back it up, that if you apply modern technology to greats in any era and say, would they be as great? I think in most cases the answer is yes. I mean, if you look at sports like professional tennis, which really got going because professionals couldn't play in the early 60s, it was amateur, the main events, and then it amalgamated. And even to a certain extent, golf, was the depth in those tournaments that we see now? The answer is probably no. So maybe one or two of the champions wouldn't have been as dominant as they are now, but I still think most greats, I'm talking about the very best, would be great in any era. So I do think he'd be a fantastic horse, but the way the programme is written now, he wouldn't have had the opportunities, because if he was to run in handicaps, you'd be talking about either everything was out of the handicap against him now, the way it is, with him having 12 stone or 11-12 and a bottom weight of 10 stone, or as in the old days, you'd be. I can remember Borough Hill Lad in the 80s once got 13 stone 7 in a handicap. Obviously, it didn't run in it, and Mrs. Pittman had something to say about it. But the handicap said, "Well, I don't want Borough Hill Lads ruining the rest of the race." So effectively, I don't want him to run. He's got other races to run in, and I think the same would be true of Arkle now. He'd be running in just the conditions races.
It may well be Arkle, but for you, from your own personal experience, who's the greatest Gold Cup winner you've ever seen?
Ooh, that's a difficult question. I mean, I only saw Arkle on television. I was just approaching my teens when he started to rule the roost. Just trying to look back over the years now. What did we see after him? I mean, Lascargo is a very underrated horse. He never gets a lot of credit. I think he went to 7 festivals. I have to check that, but he certainly went to a big handful. He was a good hurdler. He was a very good novice chaser. He obviously won a Gold Cup. He won a Grand National. He's an underrated horse. He was a good horse. Obviously, more recently, the likes of Denman, Long Run. That was a memorable Gold Cup. I'm missing one out there. Who else?
Corto Star.
Corto Star. Was he in that one?
With Long Run, yeah, they came round the bend together, Devon and
correct,
Corto,
yeah. Sorry, yes, you refreshed my memory. Yeah, that was a great race, and there's no doubt the winner that day was a very good horse. In the era, I mean, for Corto Star to do what he did and to win 2 Gold Cups, and you look back and the 2 mile races he won, the King George's he won, only a great horse could have done that. Had stamina, speed, consistency, durability. That's what you want in a racehorse. I would think outside of Arkle, he's certainly as good a horse as I've seen. Maybe sometimes you get a one-off performance in the Gold Cup, because when conditions are testing, it is a real test of stamina, and horses that can win a King George don't always shine in it. Borough Hill Lad's a good example. He was the other way around. He was a real stayer who won a Welsh National, was a decisive Gold Cup winner, but he managed to get away with winning a King George, although he only scrambled home. So he was great in that respect, but his forte was probably more stamina. He had nothing like the speed of a Corto Star.
I do look back at the Gold Cup, and I do think that perhaps, bearing in mind my age, I'm 27, that I've been spoiled by the Gold Cup growing up, because very young I saw a 3-time winner in Best Mate, and then Denman and Corto Star, Long Run. Perhaps maybe, do you think that really was a vintage era for the Cheltenham Gold Cup, or maybe there's more to come yet?
I think the year of Corto Star, Denman, Long Run came in on the end of it, was a really good horse in his own right, of course, and has a Gold Cup to his name as well. Best Mate's trained by one of my best friends, Henrietta Knight, someone I've known for 41 years. She won't like what I'm going to say. On the one hand, I don't think his Gold Cups were anything like as demanding as some of the horses we've just been talking about. But ultimately, to get a horse at Cheltenham you can only beat what's in front of you. Equally, you can only be assessed by what you race against. And people say, you can only beat what's in front of you. Yeah, but handicappers can only assess you on what you beat and how you beat them. I don't think you can say Best Mate was as good as Denman or Corto Star. Certainly, I don't think so.
And we talk about great Gold Cup winners, but in your view, what attributes does a Gold Cup winner need? Stamina to jump well? Is it a combination? Is it also? I always feel like in a championship race, you need to be able to go a pace of a Gold Cup. But if you're a dour stayer like the likes of Elegant Escape, you're going to come unstuck in a true Gold Cup.
That's probably a fair point. I remember Richard Dunwoody was absolutely distraught when Florida Pearl got beaten in the Gold Cup. When he rode him for the first time, he couldn't believe it got beaten. But he came in and he threw his saddle down, apparently. He said, even so, that's the best race I've ever ridden in. So it's attritional Gold Cup because it's 3-2. It's 22 fences, isn't it? 22 fences. You need speed and you need stamina in the main. You need that combination. And what usually happens in the Gold Cup, the dross usually gets found out on the second circuit. Dross, that's a bad word. The lesser lights, so to speak. And you'll often find that in the race, most of the field are fine for over a circuit. They go the pace, they stay, and then a bit like in a boxing match or in a top class squash match, the effort of keeping that up begins to take a toll. Jumping mistakes creep in, and it's usually left to a small handful at the end. For horses to come back and do that 2 or 3 times, they've shown themselves greatly durable. Even if in the case of Best Mate, I don't think he showed absolutely brilliant ability.
And looking ahead to this year's Gold Cup, we have a horse going for multiple wins in Album Photo. Where does this year's division rank for you? Is it an average division? And does Album Photo strike you as a horse capable of winning more than one renewal of the Gold Cup?
Yeah, he's definitely capable of winning more than one Gold Cup, but he's got an Achilles heel which didn't show itself last year to any great extent. He got away with a couple of chancy jumps. He's always been a horse capable of throwing in a howler. He got away with that last year. He's a very strong stayer, and an error-free round will see him hard to beat again because he's had a similar type of preparation. Kemboy is a horse, when you look at a horse's gait, i.e. the way, and his deportment, the way he uses his body, I think it might sound stupid for a horse that won a grade 1 at Aintree last year, but he's a horse I actually think finds it quite hard to jump, and he has an upright stance. His head's sort of back in the jockey's face. So as a consequence, he too sometimes makes mistakes, and he takes a keen hold in a race. I think he's a hard ride. He doesn't look a Cheltenham natural to me, but he's a good horse on his day. When everything does click for him. Santini looks a real stayer to me. I was quite impressed with him at Cheltenham. In the main, he jumped very well. He looked a strong stayer. He's another one. If it's a proper test of stamina, he's a big chance. Who else are we talking about?
Oh, you throw him under the bus. Well, the thing with Santini is he gets the reputation of being perhaps a bit of a slow coach. Do you think that's unfair, or do you think that is a bit warranted? I mean, I saw the Cotswold Chase, and I just saw a horse that he in Bristol de Mai, he beat a real yardstick for Grade 1 company, and he's a real contender in my eyes. But a lot of people think he just doesn't have the pace for a Gold Cup.
I think he's essentially a stayer, a bit, but as we've touched on earlier, that is one of the suits usually needed, one of the strengths usually needed to win a Gold Cup. The race to which you've just referred, the Cotswold Chase, there was a strong emphasis on stamina because of the ground, which played up his alley. And yeah, I do think he needs an emphasis on stamina. But he's relatively lightly raced compared to some that he's in against, and it'd be no surprise if he was good enough.
What about Delta work? A dual Grade 1 winner, both in Ireland. He's beaten presenting Percy and Ken Boy on 2 occasions. Is he overlooked in the market? At the moment he's about 7-1.
Yeah, I think what we're gradually going to get round to is it's a very open race,
Yeah.
And there's a big handful of talented horses who all have their strengths and maybe a slight flaw as well. They're not all brilliant jumpers. We touched on Kenboy being, in my opinion, a slightly tricky ride. Mm-hmm. Delta Work has always been inclined to nudge 1 or 2, but he's got away with it largely. But he is a very strong stayer as well. So, it looks like we're set up for a cracker. Would I have a bet in the race at the minute? No, because I really want to know what the ground is before I did.
Well, you've spoiled the final question, because I was just about to put the market in front of you and say that if I gave you a mythical £5, is there any way you'll go at the moment at the prices?
I have to say, a little bit like yourself, when I saw Santini win, because I was so unimpressed with him at Sandown, I was actually quite taken. I thought, yeah, that Windop, maybe there is something in this that he's a bit lazy, because he was unimpressive at Sandown on his reappearance, and that was a big step forward. As you said, it was quite a strong field for a Cotswold with a very solid yardstick in second. He's going to probably have to step forward a little bit more, but I think he's capable of that. I'm not saying he's a certainty, because he's not. But you've given me a question and I've given you an answer.
So that was Jim McGrath there at Bobby's preview evening. A pleasure to talk to such a man with an encyclopedic knowledge, Bobby.
Yeah, unbelievable, isn't he? He's just got so much knowledge, and it's helped me out a lot over the years, because if I want to question answering, as opposed to looking it up online or, looking through one of my books or something, I just know if I was to ring Jim and say, Jim, I've got a question for you, he'll just get it 9 times out of 10 like that, literally at the click of a finger. You can quiz him on racing and he'll get them right. He can answer questions from years gone by, from the present day. He's just a walking encyclopedia when it comes to horse race, isn't he? He's absolutely phenomenal. He's a great friend as well. Helped me out over the years, and being a huge supporter. It was great to have him there on Monday night as well on the panel.
Yeah, lucky enough to say I was there in Sheffield, talk over a few lucky guests from horseracing.net. There was 4 of us over. We all had a really, really good night, Bobby, and hopefully, I believe you raised plenty of money as well for charity.
Yeah, that was the main aim, wasn't it, Nick? We raised over £1,500 for the Bob Beevers Memorial Melanoma Fund, which is the fund we set up in memory of my dad. All the money we raised, thank you. All the money we raised went to research at Western Park Cancer Hospital in Sheffield. So all the money has gone there, and initially I thought we'd probably raise about £500 to £600, and the fact we raised over £1,500 was phenomenal with the ticket sales, with the raffles, with the auction as well. The auction brought in a lot of money. So yeah, it was a very, very great night. Brilliant that we sold out as well. And yes, I will be organising one for 2021 and beyond.
A quick word on that raffle. The longest raffle I think I've ever seen. It was like something from Phoenix Nights. It was like, I think there must have been about 35 bottles of wine, and I think the lads the 4 lads on the panel kept drawing them out. It just never stopped. I have never seen anything like it. But everybody won, I suppose. So
yeah, I'll tell you why, Nick. That the prize list for the raffle doubled well, not even doubled. It went from like 10 prizes up to about 30 odd. And as you said, the vast majority was bottles of wine. What happened when I got there, I spoke to the hotel manager, Craig, and Craig got me a few prizes. And he said to me, he says, I've got you quite a few bottles of wine. I said, oh, Craig, that's brilliant. And I just said, yeah, as many as you want, not thinking anything too much about it. So he brought in quite a few bottles of wine. And then a chap called Dennis, who attended the evening, he was there with Tipper's Thord Racing, who was one of the sponsors, And he said to me, as a gesture and a present, he brought with him some cases of wine for the raffle. Now, that was a surprise to me, that, because I didn't know he was doing that. And of course, I was very, very grateful for what he'd done. And he wanted to donate some wine for prizes. So that is why there was so much wine we was giving away in the raffle, because we just got so much wine to give away. And as you said, in the end, everybody was a winner. Everyone took home a bottle of wine. It was fantastic.
I think we took him about 6 bottles of wine.
Did you?
No, it was really, really good, and great to see so much money raised as well, Bobby. And it leads quite nicely anyway into the next interview. We've been talking about Jonjo O'Neill Jr. I caught up with Jonjo O'Neill at the Cheltenham Media Day to hear more about his string ahead of the Cheltenham Festival.
Jonjo, less than 2 weeks now until the Cheltenham Festival. How's everything shaping up for you ahead of the 4-day meeting?
Yeah, it's quite good at the moment, touch wood. Just all we want now is the weather to clear up a bit and get a bit of sunshine and a bit of drying ground, which can happen here fairly quickly, really. But let's hope it does, because all mine wouldn't want it very heavy, really. So we're looking forward to it drying up.
And you've got a really interesting squad this year. We'll start with the old boy Minella Rocco, who is no stranger to running really well at this festival, and he seems rejuvenated by the switch to Hunter Chase Company.
Yeah, he's a superstar, really, a superstar in the yard. He's in great form. He's had a bit of luck in his 2 runs, but you need that, and he seems to have got it this year, so hopefully he'll hang on to it until he comes here. But he would definitely need it to be drying out, really. He wouldn't want it too heavy, because you need everything going right for you here, really. It's okay going to the smaller tracks and going on different ground, but for his best ability is nice ground. He's in great shape. He's loved the jumping at the moment, and he's just got a real spring in his steps, so hopefully he can keep that for another couple of days.
Yeah, what is it about Cheltenham that seems to bring the best out of him? Memories go back to that brilliant effort to finish second in the Gold Cup 2 or 3 years ago. He just seems to love it round here.
Yeah, he does, and he won the 4-miler here before that. So, he, you know, even though I always say it's not really his track, because he's such a big horse, it's quite tight, really, around here. But he somehow seems to manage it okay. He's a lot of ability, and as we all know, you've got to stay here at Cheltenham and get up the hill, like so. Once he gets into a bit of a straight line, he can keep galloping, and he wears them all down. So let's hope he'll do that again.
And another interesting runner for you is the mare Annie Mac. Now, she's 3 over 3 over fences so far, and she's got a few options as well at the festival. Have you any idea where she could head?
No, we'll probably wait and see what the ground is like and try and find out what's running where and what, really. So we'll probably leave that till the last minute, really. But she's in great old form. She's had lovely time over fences. She's had small fields and jumped really well and got away with it. It'll be a bit harder work here. But she's in great form, and, you know, whichever race she'll go for, hopefully she'll put up a good show, you know.
And another horse it's difficult not to have been impressed with is Cloth Cap, who carries some really familiar colours in those of Trevor Hemings, and he looks a staying chaser to follow.
Yeah, we were very pleased with his run in the Scottish National last year. Jumped great. He loves that ground. He loves the sunshine. He is a spring horse, really. He was disappointing at Doncaster, though, you know, and that kind of let us down a bit. Came home a little bit sore, and, you know, was not an awful lot to really pin down, you know. But he's in grand form at home. Richie rode him work the other day, and he thought he was on his way back and in good form. So if we keep getting a bit of sunshine now and a bit of drying ground, you know, hopefully he'll come back and run a cracking race here, either in the Volk Walwyn or the Ultimate, one of the two, and then probably go on to Ayr. That would be the plan.
You potentially got quite a few in the Ultimate, you know, Ready and Able and Coentro as well. Are they likely to go there too?
Ready and Able, he won't go in the Ultimate, no. He might struggle a little bit, but hopefully running in the, well, he's qualified for the Potence and he might run the Cameo, we'll see. But what was the other one?
Coentro and Ready and Able?
Coentro, yeah, he's in grand form. He'll run in one of the races, whether it'll be the But we'll try and find the easier one, obviously. But he's in great form and done nothing wrong this year, so hopefully a good run for him as well, you know.
And last but not least, I've got to ask you about a certain Jonjo O'Neill Jr, who is having a brilliant time at the moment. He must be looking forward to the festival himself.
Yeah, I don't know what he rides, but he'll ride Annie Mac, obviously, I would imagine. But yeah, he's having a good run at the moment, and you know, when you're having a good run, you're going to expect a bad one at some stage, but hopefully it'll last through over Cheltenham and Aintree. But yeah, he's riding well, and things are going great for him at the moment. So he had a pretty slow start the first couple of years with injuries, but he's having a good run at the moment, so long may it last.
Great to have Jonjo O'Neill with us on the podcast. Now, as promised at the start of the podcast, we said we'll be looking ahead to Cheltenham, and we're going to look ahead to the Supreme this week. So myself and Nick are going to go through a few of the runners and riders. Now, when I did my notes, Envoy Alain was the market leader. However, it's looking like he's going to go to the Ballymore now. So it's completely drifted in the Supreme market like you would expect. Shishkin, though, is the new market leader for Nicky Henderson. Very impressive, Nick, last time out at Huntingdon.
Yeah, very, very impressive. Spoke to Nicky Henderson about him last week, and his quote was, "So far, so good," which is, I think, meaningful from a trainer that has seen many a Supreme performer over the years, won the race 3 times. And there was a lot to like. You know, he had a big reputation. He was bought for an awful lot of money by the Donnellys. And there was a lot to like about his performance at Huntingdon over 2.5 miles. Granted, it was only listed level, but there were a couple of decent performers in there. Showed plenty of pace to put the race to bed. Yeah, you know, looks a very exciting prospect. I think the thing is with these types of horses, as it is with the novice division in general, sometimes you do rely on style over substance and market movers and things like that, you know, vibes in the market, vibes from the trainers to gauge how good a horse really is. But, you know, in Shishkin's defence, he hasn't had the chance yet to show what he can do because he's not running Grade 1 company. The fact that he's 5-2 favourite probably suggests that he's very good. It probably is on a smidge on the short side, but I imagine he'll go off favourite. He'll have a favourite's chance. And the most interesting angle with Shishkin is the fact that it looks like the Donnellys are going to have the first 2 in the market here. It's something really, really rare with owners that, apart from Gigginstown, who just own everybody, but you know, that they have 2 really good ones in a particular division and decide to race them. So that's really refreshing, and I hope for their sake that we see a 1-2.
You know, with Asterion Furlong, it's interesting with Asterion Furlong, isn't it? Because, you know, Mrs. Donnelly, she's got Shishkin and she's got Asterion Furlong as well. Would you not be tempted, because Asterion Furlong is also entered for the Ballymore, to potentially go for the Ballymore, keep them separate with it being obviously the same owner? Because, you know, if you look through the form, Asterion Furlong did win a point-to-point over 2.5 miles. So the extra furlong, you know, would that be too much of a concern, do you think?
No, I mean, he's got, you know, in his pedigree that he should stay a bit further. And, you know, the other clue is the fact that Asterion Furlong has entries for all 3 of the novice races. So it's clearly gone through the mind. You know, Shishkin's also entered in the Ballymore. So if they really wanted to keep them apart, they definitely could. You know, Shishkin ran over 2.5 last time. There's definitely scope to step up Asterion Furlong in trip. You know, you can only take it as a sign that they feel that this is their pair of their best trips, so why not race them? And, you know, Asterion Furlong was another that was an expensive purchase, another with a big reputation. He was well backed coming into the race at Leopardstown, and, you know, he's 3 from 3 now. He won the Farmer, the Grade 1 last time out. He probably looked more impressive than Shishkin did. It's going to be a fascinating race. There's so many subplots here, you know, because not only is it, you know, the same owner having a runner, but it's also Mullins against Henderson. It's a real chance for one of them to make an early score, or for somebody to spoil the party as well, you know, because I know Envoy Alain isn't going to run probably in the Supreme, but Abracadabra to lead into the next horse, it has a chance as well.
I always say, just looking at that, if you are looking, we need to look at other horses that could potentially spoil the Mrs. Donnelly forecast here. Abracadabra definitely ticks the box as a Grade 1 winner last time out. You've also got Fiddler on the Roof for Colin Tizard, who won the Tolworth last time out. And, you know, Somerville boy a couple of years ago won the Tolworth, then went on to win the Supreme.
Yeah, as you say, lots of Grade 1 winning form in this race. It looks a very open renewal of the Supreme. Was impressed by Fiddler on the Roof. It feels a long time ago now, back at the start of January. The Tolworth is a race that sometimes seems to prove to be strong form, sometimes doesn't. I think it generally tends to be a bit of a test as well. It was soft going in January, but Fiddler on the Roof did it really, really well, and it looked like a strong field coming into it. You know, not all of them fired that day, but Fiddler on the Roof beat what was in front of him. The form looks pretty strong to me, and he's the strongest of the British charge, you'd say. So he's got to have a chance, as does Abracadabra, the other Irish raider representing Gordon Elliott. He's got Grade 1 winning form as well, won over Christmas. It was only a 4-runner affair, and he was odds on for it, but he beat Blue Sari, who was very well regarded himself. All right, he wasn't 100% on the day, but there's been very little wrong with what he's done so far. Abracadabra, the only horse to beat him is Envoy LN so far. He won't be here, you'd imagine. So yeah, a lively contender, very much so. And the interesting thing is, with all the four we've mentioned so far, that there's plenty more for them to come as well.
JP McManus has got Chantry House from the Nicky Henderson yard, and Sporting John from the Philip Hobbs's yard. Now, I think Sporting John more than likely may go for the Ballymore, leaving Chantry House to go for the Supreme. Chantry House here, Nick, is undefeated under rules.
Yeah, as is Sporting John, I must say. So two very exciting prospects for JP McManus. Nice to see him, you know, because as an owner who puts an awful lot into the sport, to be getting these nice ones. Chantry House, one with a very big reputation, won that bumper at Warwick last March, you know, really, really well, and then made a great hurdling debut in probably what wasn't a strong race at Cheltenham over Christmas, just before Christmas. And then, followed up at Newbury last time out, did it very well. He's another one you're probably relying on style over substance. He was an expensive purchase as a 4-year-old, represents really powerful connections, you know, very attractive pedigree. There will undoubtedly be more to come from him, but you are sort of taking it on trust in regards to, you know, compared to some of the others who do have bona fide pattern or graded form, and Sporting John as well, I should say, likely to go elsewhere. Plenty to like what he's done so far. Was impressed with how he went through the gears at Ascot last time out a couple of weeks ago. So very exciting pair for JP McManus.
Just going to chuck one in as well. Edwin Stone, who was second in a Supreme trial that was up at Haydock, but actually beat Fiddler on the Roof last November. I think it's generally around 14-1, Nick, and I think Edwin Stone could be a crack in each way for the Supreme. He's not going to be my main tip, so I'm going to say to you now, Nick, what will be your selection for this year's Supreme Novices?
Well, I will say I'll back you up on Edwin Stone, because I was at Haydock for that Supreme trial, and as it always is at Haydock, it was absolutely bottomless back in January. It was on Peter Marsh Day. It was won by Stolen Silver from Nigel Twist and Davis' team, who had a brilliant day that day. Ballyandy went on to win the Champion Hurdle trial. It looked for a long way like Edwin Stone had the race tied up, and then, well, he did tie up late on. Probably did a little bit too much too quick, but I wouldn't rule him out. He has some pretty strong form under his belt. You know, it's particularly if it does carry on raining, I think he certainly is one to consider. I think it's wide open, isn't it, this year's Supreme? I think at the prices, I'd be tempted to take on Shishkin at 5-2. I think he's short enough for all that he has a big reputation, and he could well be the likeliest winner. I do like Abracadabra. But I think at the prices, I'd have a go on Fiddler of the Roof. His form has proven very strong so far. If you go back before the Tolworth, his win at Sandown has worked out reasonably well, and as well, I know Edwin Stone got the better of him, but he's really come on since then. I think there's plenty to like, and the Colin Tizard team is really starting to hit top gear now. So I'd probably go with Fiddler on the Roof.
I'm going to go with Asterion Forlonge to win for Willie Mullins, another winner in the Supreme for Mr. Mullins. Of course, won it 12 months ago with a certain classical dream. But Asterion Forlonge for me, and each way Edward Stone. Right then, that's the end of this week's Jumps Racing podcast. We hope you've enjoyed it, listening and watching as well if you are watching us on YouTube. Don't forget, for all the latest Cheltenham Festival content, make sure you visit the website at allthews.horseracing.net, and don't forget to follow them on Twitter as well at horseracing_net. That is the Twitter handle on Twitter, so make sure you do drop them a follow. They've got some cracking content, big interviews as well. Make sure you check it. Make sure you do check it all out. But in the meantime, from myself and from Nick, we wish you all a very good evening, and we'll catch up with you all next week.